99% of the time I review a bike, it's something I have on loan and I send it back after a couple of months. After all, this whole YouTube thing is just a hobby, and I'd be tens of thousands of dollars in debt if I had to buy each one. Unfortunately, this arrangement isn't always possible, especially when it comes to the more boutique and small companies out there. So, on the rare occasion a bike just speaks to my soul and a loaner's out of the question, out comes my wallet. My latest obsession? The Stooge Speedbomb, a modern take on the clunker with trail bike geometry and clearance for big old 29 plus tires. I built mine up a few months ago and have been putting it through its paces. In this video, I'm going to tell you what I found to be its strengths and its weaknesses and who this bike is for. So let's get into it. Stooge is a one-man show located in the UK and led by Andy Stevenson. It all started with him deciding to design his ideal rigid bike, and now over a decade later, he's got a full lineup ranging from a monster gravel bike to a shreddy trail bike. Everything is sold as a frame set, so no complete bikes, and they're made out of steel, or if you're wanting titanium, you can get one made to order. To be completely honest, I'm pretty intrigued by every bike in the Stooge lineup, but the Speedbomb is the one that really caught my attention. First off, the frame profile is really unique with a rugged but somehow classic looking design. Not only does it have a dual top tube with a kink in it, there's also another single tube running from the down tube all the way back to the seat posts. There aren't a whole lot of bikes like this being made out there, and even fewer if you exclude one-off or custom-made versions. The frame is double-butted 4130 chromoly, it has boost spacing, and it can run a 30.9mm internal dropper post. It also has an eccentric bottom bracket, which allows for two things: a more consistent bottom bracket height when switching between wheel sizes, and the option of going single speed if that's your thing. If you're looking at this for bike packing instead of shredding, the good news is it now has rear rack mounts and an extra bottle cage mount under the down tube. The updated version also comes with the Clunk Packer biplane fork, which has 65mm of offset, triple cage and rack mounts, and can clear a 29 by 3¼ inch tire. I think it's a perfect match for the look and design of this frame, which is a good thing because it has a non-suspension corrected design, so no swapping a suspension fork on. One important thing to note before touching on the geometry side of things, it's only available in one size, 18 inches. With a 625 effective top tube, 459.6 reach, and 604.5 stack, I'd consider it a medium large, which is great because at 5'10.5", that's exactly my size. Other geometry figures to note are the 66 degree head angle, 74.5 degree seat angle, 450 chain stays, and 75 mils of bottom bracket drop. That last one might sound like a lot of drop, but 29 plus tires are ridiculously tall, so I think it's necessary to keep the bike stable. For many of you, those numbers aren't going to mean a whole lot, so let's jump into how this all translates on the trail, starting with the strengths. First off, this bike is so fun to ride and incredibly capable on some pretty gnarly terrain. I like to write down some notes at the end of each ride when I'm reviewing something, and the Speedbomb had a recurring theme: shreddability. With the big tires, long and slack front end, and the low bottom bracket, steep and fast trails, rock rolls, and drops are a blast. Just pick your line, point the bike, and go for it. It's still a rigid bike, so you can't take on rock gardens or drops in quite the same way as a full suspension or even a hardtail, but boy does this thing like to go fast and take on spicy stuff. It doesn't even have to be that technical either. Some of the most fun I had on this bike was bombing down the mostly buff single track of the Continental Divide Trail. The second strength is one that surprised me: the eccentric bottom bracket. As I've been more and more immersed in the Stooge culture, I've noticed there's a lot of people running them single speed, to the point in fact that I'm considering trying it that way at some point too. On top of that though, is the ability to adjust the bottom bracket height to run different wheel sizes, and that's something I consider another major strength of this bike. I love swapping wheels and tires for different use cases or ride feels, but I've run into some issues in the past like pedal strikes when going lower, or a weird on top of the bike sensation when going to a taller size. The Speedbomb can run 29 plus, 27.5 plus, mixed, or your typical 29er. Sizes that all have varying overall diameters. I unfortunately haven't been able to run 27.5 plus just yet, but it's in the works, and you better believe I'll be raising that bottom bracket to compensate for the smaller size. My frame came stock with the bottom bracket in the neutral forward position, which is where I've left it, and it's felt great with a 29x3 in the rear and a 29x3 1/4 up front. Without changing the wheels, I could also change the feel of the bike. For a more stable ride, I can swing it down to increase the drop, or if I wanted the bike to feel more nimble, I could rotate it up to the top. The next strength of the Speedbomb is the mounting locations. Before riding the bike, I didn't think twice about them because as a rigid plus bike, it just seemed like a given that there would be rack and other mounts. Now though, I realize why they weren't on the original version, because at its heart, it's a trail bike, and those don't often see much bike packing or utility usage. My sense is that the average Stooge rider is looking for a good mix of versatility and capability, so adding spots for racks and an extra bottle was a really smart move. I know it's something that I look for, and before the frame had even shipped, I had actually put an order in for a custom bag from Ghost Cat Bags. Josh, the owner of Ghost Cat, has a Speedbomb, so he had all the dimensions needed, and I have to admit the bag has been one of my favorite things about this bike. It fits everything from a multi-tool, to a silky saw, to more food than I need for a 6-hour ride, without taking away any real estate from the bottles. It's helped me to see this bike as more than just a trail ripper, but something I could legitimately have some multi-day bikepacking adventures on. The final strength of the Speedbomb is entirely a matter of opinion, and something I have already said several times. It's just a really cool looking bike. The biplane fork, the dual top tube, the overall shape throwing back to the tracker bikes from 75 years ago. It's a bike that has drawn questions and comments on the trail, and luckily it's not just a form over function type of thing. It's got the ride qualities to back it up. As much as I'd like to say the Speedbomb is the perfect bike with no flaws to be found, we don't live in a perfect world, so that's not the case. The most obvious weakness here is the weight. All of those extra tubes, mounts, and even the eccentric bottom bracket, they all add up. The weight before build was 5.7 kilograms, roughly 12.5 pounds, and that's for the frame, the uncut fork, seat clamp, and all of the mounting bolts. There's no way around it. It's just a really heavy way to start things out. My complete bike came out to around 34.5 pounds, which isn't terrible, but again, it's far from light. With my fat bike and the Jones LWB that I ride regularly, I'm pretty used to bikes being right around that weight, so I can't say I really noticed it when riding, but I'm sure that others will. If you're looking at a steel frame with a million tubes like this, I don't think weight is something you're really thinking much about though, so maybe it's not a huge concern after all. The second weakness is the stack. 604 isn't the lowest number I've seen, but it comes pretty close. I'm sure part of this is by design. Take a look at the bars Andy sells and puts on all of his bikes, and you'll see the rise numbers are huge. The downside of that is more bar means more weight, especially because most of the really tall riser bars are going to be steel too. I used the Steve Potts camper bars at first with 38 mils of rise, and while it worked fine, I liked the fit and look better once I swapped to Stooge's own Junker bars with 85 millimeters of rise. Unless you already have a specific handlebar you like or want to use, I'd highly recommend pairing one of his bars with the frame set that you buy. Another thing that came to mind is more of a nitpick than a true weakness. I wish the rear could clear a 3¼ inch tire. It's a small adjustment that I'm sure actually takes a lot more headache than it's worth. I mean, there's a ton that goes on in that area with the chain ring and chain line clearance and everything, so I get why he's happy with the 3-inch tire. But for the small amount of users that have had the joy of using a 3¼ tire front and rear, it's hard to not wish the clearance was there. So, who is the Speedbomb for? Well, first of all, it's for someone who wants a beautiful, retro-looking bike with modern features and tons of capability. It's for someone who, like me, loves rigid 29 plus bikes, but wants something that can handle black diamond trails and fast and rowdy riding. Most rigid plus bikes are geared more toward bike packing, and therefore they have more conservative geometry, so the Speedbomb is kind of an anomaly here. But with the added utility on this latest version, it's also for someone who wants something for hitting trails less traveled, staying out for a night or two or even more than that, and maybe having some fun on some tougher spots along the way. The Speedbomb's sweet spot, where it feels most at home, is on blue, black, and maybe even some double black trails. Trails that are hand cut and a little torn up, with rowdy bonus lines and enough time pointed downward to pick up some real speed. Don't get me wrong, it's still a rigid bike, so you're going to have to change how you ride those trails if you're used to suspension, but even then, it's insane how capable it is. It's not particularly fun to ride on dirt roads and green trails, but if the flow gets fast enough, the bike comes alive and it can be a really fun time. So if you're someone who has a little retro grouch in you, but you want to have all the capability that we've gained from modern geometry and components, the Speedbomb is a bike I'd take a serious look at. As I mentioned at the beginning, this isn't a bike that was sent to me to review. I bought it myself, but I still want to give a shout out to Andy at Stooge for how easy he was to work with. I pre-ordered this frame, and by the time shipping came around, tariffs were the hot topic. It was a really confusing time, but he didn't skip a beat, and he got everything handled without any extra cost or delays. If you want to know more about the Speedbomb or Stooge as a brand, check out the link that I put down in the description. Also, kind of as a side note, I've had a lot of people ask me how this compares to my beloved Jones LWB, and I'll definitely have a video coming soon comparing those two. To give you a quick sense, I'm someone who hates having two bikes that fill the same purpose, and I see no need to sell either of these. If you want to see that video or more from me in general, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.